Galaxy's Edge Fan Expo.
Welcome everybody. I'm Daniel, aka Do0117 Swordfish on the Galaxy's Edge Discord. I'm interviewing Tom and my co-event person, Dr. Donna DeBonis, is going to be helping with this interview. So yeah, um, Donna, can you talk about yourself for a bit?
Yes, hi, I'm everyone. I'm very happy to welcome Galaxy's Edge Fan Expo to the site the second year in a row. We've got 12 and a half acres here, beautiful, beautiful meadows, and people had a super good time last year, and we're going to see that happen again this year. And today we have with us Tom Trimbath. He's the author guest of honor for the Galaxy's Edge Fan Expo. He's an author, writer, photographer, speaker, teacher, consultant, engineer, entrepreneur. You get the picture. He's done it all. And there's more things to do. So in 2022, he published Firewatcher, a sci-fi novel written to invite collaborations. And we're going to talk about that. So Daniel,
Gotta show the book. Gotta show the book.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, Daniel, I'll let you take it from here, and you can talk about how the Galaxy's Edge Fan Expo will be handling the authors panels, and Tom in particular.
Yeah. So I do want to start off with Tom. How did you get into writing, and what is your what is it that you like to focus on for your genre, and how let's figure that out, and then we can make the link to why it links to Galaxy's Edge.
I just started chuckling because this whole thing's been by accident. I think my life has been by accident, but I graduated. I used to be an aerospace engineer, and I retired, and I didn't know what to do. I retired at 38, and I bicycled across the United States. It's just to see if I could lose some weight, and it happened on both sides of 9/11. So it ended up being this pre-post story about America. So I didn't plan on doing anything, and a bunch of my friends convinced me to write it. So I've written that, and eventually started tapping more and more into my tech side, the aerospace engineer side. And about 8 years ago, I came up with an idea for a sci-fi novel, and there's a whole story behind the image and how it all came about. But it took me 8 years to write it, which is, I think to be expected. And that came out just last year. The reason I point out the 8-year thing is I wrote it because I thought that by 2040, we're probably going to end up with a very intelligent AI. And I thought by 2040, we were probably going to have greater climate change. And I thought by 2040, we'd be having things like pocket fusion generators. And sure enough, here we are after having published the book, that a lot of these things are actually topical, and not in 2040, but in 2023. So it's been a heck of an accidental ride, but I'm not complaining about it. It's been a fascinating thing to go through. That kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So
Cool.
yeah, we Tom is also a local author. So one of the important things that we are trying to do is try to help out local and small-time independent authors to rise above, get past that big publisher hurdle, and get these amazing stories that they have out to a broader public. Because I mean, honestly, that's kind of where Jason and Nick started with Galaxy's Edge. They are self-published, and one of the big things is being able to be independent from having to deal with excess oversight from certain corporations that either want you to write a specific thing and have all this specific stuff, and it's just like the authors that appreciate the freedom of, you know what, I have this fantastic idea of what I think may be a possibility. I'm going to just write a good story with the characters that I create, and people will like it. Instead of
So I'm going to give a shout out. I'm going to give a shout out to how then we connected, because we're talking about, supporting new authors, new writers, or at least ones who haven't made it past that hurdle.
Yeah.
Because I know you were talking to Don Scobie, who is got a sci-fi novel or two in his head. He's also been writing cookbooks, but he and I co-hosted and co-produced a podcast called WritingOnWhidbeyIsland.com.
Mm-hmm.
Whidbey Island has got world famous authors. I mean, you can walk down the street and you're running across folks that have New York Times bestsellers and things like that. The most expensive houses on the island tend to be those of authors. But we thought there's all these hundreds, if not thousands, of writers on this island. He and I can't do anything more than just say, hey, we're going to interview you for an hour. Tell us about what it's like to be a writer or an illustrator or a bookbinder or whatever. So he got connected with you, and then he passed my name along to you, which I was totally unaware of, and glad for.
Yeah, that
But
was a really cool introduction. I appreciated that.
yeah, and the other thing he and I have also done is I've been self-publishing. My first book was self-published in 2002, so I've been watching that industry change for the last 20 some odd years, and it's been fascinating watching technology, but also the mindset of self-publishing is no longer this stigma.
Mm-hmm.
It's an accomplishment, and I'm really glad to see that happening now.
Yeah. And
sure. Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're aiming for, is, helping show that this is actually a reality, that, if you have the ability and the thought process to pursue this goal, it can be attained. And that's why we have authors like Nick, Jason, Walt, all, share their knowledge for how they got to where they are. And certainly Tom, because now he can say, I have 21 years of experience with going through the process of trying to figure out how to self-publish without having to rely on a traditional publisher, and get it done that way. And you were saying that you've had how many books out so far at this point?
I've written 8.
Mm-hmm.
I've produced 10, which were photo essays,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got, well, I'll just go back to the classic writer thing. I've got 3 other books in mind. Which ones do you want to talk about, kind of thing? Because once you get started and you realize which hurdles to worry about and which hurdles to get help for,
Mm-hmm.
it enables the mind, the ideas just start to flow, which is a wonderful. So I'm just shy of, what is it? I figured out I'm at 2,930,000 words at this point that have been published in books, articles, posts with clients, and things like that. One would hope that I'm writing better now than I did when I wrote that first book, and that's the other thing that I've really found enabling about it is, between self-publishing and social media and having blogs and things like that, you can now produce your ideas and get them out there without having to only worry about an editor or only worry about an agent. You can take an idea and you can drop it out onto Twitter and just say, see if there's anybody that cares. And that has been fascinating for me, because it's gotten me out of, I'm alone. No, you're not. There's other folks that want to hear what you have to say. And also to find out that those other folks that want to hear what I have to say may not be from the cluster of folks that I would know in my neighborhood. That it's people in other countries that are going, yes, I want to hear about that. And that's been enabling and energizing. Because the tools we have now are far better than what we had 25 years ago. What a surprise.
One of the cool things
And you
that...
keep pretty sharp too. Oh, sorry, Tom, you also keep pretty sharp because you're writing in your blog just about every day, aren't you?
It feels that way. No. Up until I just had a recent job change, which means I had to pass on 2 of my blogs, one of which was to give Writing on Whidbey Island back to Doe and to him shepherd it. But I will post once a week for sure on most of my blogs, and there is one that I'll post every day if the news is appropriate. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but I've got a blog called pretendingnotTopanic.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a blog about news of significance. So it's got to be apolitical, but it's got to be factual. It's got to be logical. It's got to have data behind it, and do things like, some country has 200,000% inflation. know that these sorts of things can happen, and at the same time, be able to post things like somebody just literally found a cure for a certain disease.
Hmm.
So I did the positive and the negative, but I don't get political about it at all.
That's
Well, at least I
fantastic.
don't think so. I don't think so.
Well, yeah, and that's also one of the biggest contributing factors to a lot of the problems is when people feel the need to force a certain political bias into a
Mhm.
media, especially when a good amount of people when they're reading books or listening to audiobooks, they are doing it to, take their mind away from, real
Okay.
life stuff to an extent, and just like I'm I'm going to go off and enjoy this story right here. I don't care that the house is on fire, that the world is burning. I'm going to just spend a nice, cool 10 to 11 hours enjoying this little universe, you know.
Uh-huh. Well, that's why when I was writing it, like I said, I've been writing it for years, and then COVID hit. So and that's happening right at the time when all the words are being finally fed onto the page.
Hmm.
And I said, I need an escape, and I wasn't finding the escapes that I found on YouTube or anywhere else as engaging as having fun with my characters. I mean, yes, I was writing. Yes, I was writing, but it's like there's going to be whoopee cushions. There's going to be people blowing raspberries back and forth at each other because even in conflict, folks find humor.
Hmm.
So why should I, in the midst of an upset in my life, do otherwise? Why should I just dwell on the how many folks two masks instead of one mask for a while? How many folks uh, all these mistakes we make in our everyday lives that you miss that sort of thing. So I made sure I incorporated the fact that somebody might not have tied their shoes when they were running to put out the fire or things like that
Yeah,
because slapstick happens.
it does.
Now that's
And
not
with
to
your
say
particular,
it's not to say it's comedy because there are people that die in the thing and things like that too. But again, how much foxhole humor is there, right?
in your
Exactly.
particular book, you had mentioned to me that you were actually you had set it up so that other people can write in the different aspects of your story. Could you touch on that just real briefly? Because I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's going to be kind of exciting for people coming to the event. When this particular event is set up so that people and the authors are accessible to one another. It's not just come on stage, do your spiel, and the panel
Uh,
walks off. The others are away.
uh,
This is a constant kind of flow back and forth. So let us know how your book is set up for that uh,
well, I'll preface it
collaboration.
by saying I'm a fan of Robert Aspirin and Larry Niven.
Mhm.
And Robert Aspirin, I think, was the one behind Thieves World, and Larry Niven was behind the Man Kids in Wars. And both of them realized at some point that they could write their own books, but they can't write as many books as they could. It was just a limited time. So what they do is they open them up to collaborators. It sounds like you've done that. Galaxy's Edge has done that. So here I am. I'm writing the book in one evening, and I just talked about the ship is leaving the planet, and I realized if I just made it ships instead of just ship, then 6 years of having developed the technology basis, the science, the culture, and the history that I'd built for this whole world, just by making it ships, I can say, okay, I'm writing about this ship, and I can open it up to, I left it at six, five other authors who want to step in then and can pick up what I've written as the scientific and cultural basis of the system, and they don't have to do that. They don't have to invent that. They can just go ahead and launch into their world. Yeah, I mean there's ground rules. You don't step on somebody else's toes. You don't do something in your story that invalidates somebody else's story and things like that. And I've come up with some ways of doing that.
Hmm.
But I just realized that's kind of a fun thing to do. I mean, I enjoy writing, but I enjoy reading. And I know that there's going to be five other folks out there that would just take the ideas that I've got and just go off with them in ways I'd never expect. And if you can't hear the rising tone of my voice, it's because, oh, come on, that would be a kick. That'd be
Exciting.
fun. So how could you not do that by just adding an S after a ship,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
all of a
Yeah,
sudden you've got a
perfect.
collaboration?
Uh,
Um,
so
so one of the cool things that you highlighted was in your when you're doing your writing, you'll have the slapstick comedy, bits like sprinkled in like as flavoring,
Hmm.
but then you also draw upon your real life experience
Hmm.
in aeronautical engineering, to
Right.
give a little bit more realism to the book, and
Not only that,
actually help out anybody that is an engineer who's like listening, and
right.
it's like, that's not how that works. That doesn't work that way. You're wrong. Stop. And just like how Nick and Jason for Galaxy's Edge, they relied on their military audience, and I know Nick relied on some of his military background, and also some of their proofreaders that they had to be like, yeah, no, this is how we actually talk and operate amongst each other, and it gives a lot more engagement with the audience, because the audience feels like, oh yeah, this character, I knew this character, he was in my unit, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I'm chuckling. I love the altruistic thing that I was doing all this to provide this great groundwork for the thing so everyone would find it believable. No. Well, that's true. I mean, I want it to be that approachable and have an avenue in. I used to work with a bunch of expert aerospace engineers, experts in AI. I know that as soon as I do this book, they're going to be going, no, no. And so I had to at least raise the level up enough that I could apologize to them without making it a farce as far as they were concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really on a living in, you end up with living in the Puget Sound area, you end up with this community of, well, of artists and finance folks, but the aerospace tech community around here is just astonishing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to do something without them knowing about it. So when you write a book and you find an astronaut candidate calling you up and going, "Hey, I'm glad that you did this the way you did this." It's like,
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much. And there's another part of that, and it'll come along after you start talking, and I want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that was the point I actually just wanted to hit on, was
Okay.
specifically the fact that, you do put a little bit of effort more into
Hmm.
your books. Like, you do that extra research, because either if it's to avoid criticism, or to keep the readers engaged, so that they aren't like,
Right.
why, um like, the only time
Well,
that
that's a reason.
that the readers should be, questioning why, is when something amazing happens in the book, either good or bad. Not why did they do this, this is stupid, this doesn't make any
Right.
sense, and then it's just like
So let's.
poorly written characters. That's the kind of why that we don't like.
One of my pet peeves is to be watching a movie or a show, or actually to be reading as well, and to find that it sounds like the character's an engineer, but they react like they're a writer.
Hmm.
The character's a pilot, but they talk like they're a talk show host. My favorite pilot story was a 747 that lost all four engines as it was coming into Australia.
Hmm.
British Airways, they flew into a volcanic cloud. The pilot's response, I think it was actually the pilot not flying, was on the radio saying, "We have a spot of bother." They didn't go apoplectic. It wasn't hyperbole. It wasn't. It was, we have a spot of bother, and they found a way out. And everybody was fine. Everybody was safe. Everybody was
I,
freaked, but everybody was fine.
I
But
remember
just
that,
to see that,
because the volcanic ash basically had gotten sucked
right?
into the engines and melted them.
Yeah, basically what you're doing is you're taking a Cuisinart and then you're throwing in hot ash
I mean, that's
that
just what
wants
you
to be
do.
glass. Right. It really cleans the blades.
Hmm.
But that's the thing that's always impressed me is there's a few authors that I've seen where they've taken an engineer or a scientist and they don't have them become something else. In other words, and I don't say that they're not emotional. I know engineers and scientists are as emotional as anybody, but if you're in a crisis situation, you also know that when you're expressing that later. What you're expressing right there in the moment is what needs to be done, and we can save the hyperbole for later. and that's something that I really like. So I purposely have done that, where my pilot is hopefully acting like a pilot, the mayor of the colony is hopefully acting like a mayor of a colony, that kind of thing. And I don't know if I succeeded, but I'm writing the sequel anyway. So, but that was
So damn them if they do, and damn if they don't.
but that's the thing is, as much as I will write a book so somebody else can buy it, and I think you actually asked a tangential version of this question earlier. What I look for in my writing and my photography, and it took me a while to figure this out, but in my writing and my photography and my speaking and my teaching, the central thread is people and ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated with ideas, and I'm astonished with people. I mean, you look at how many folks I know, folks who say they're boring. They're going, you talking about
Yeah.
nothing, as if nothing's happening in your life, and yet you've developed this life where you've raised a family, and you've had a career, and you've gone places, and there's places that you haven't gone, and there's been trauma. You are not boring. So I love taking ideas from people and passing them around, because I think there's enough things we need to work on in this world where we can't wait. We can't be saying, for instance, I've got a series of inventions, and I can get into more deep depth with that, but I just put them out there for free, because to patent an invention can take 15 years, and I'm thinking some of these things should really be enabled now. Besides, if it took 15 years, I'd be 80. I don't want to wait that long to see if it works. So, but for me, it really is. It's people and ideas, and heck, let me go play with that. Sure, let me go play with that, and that's as much motivation as I need. I need more time, more hours in the day, but that's my motivation.
Yeah, that's a common thread that I hear from a lot of authors. There's not enough time to do all this stuff, and I know one of the authors, Walt, that he's gonna be at the event as well. He's like, yeah, I've only gotten like 3 hours of sleep tonight, but that's okay. I got work to do, and like, I mean, I understand. Well, it's fantastic that you have such great work ethic, and you're always working, but could you try aiming for like 6 hours of sleep, maybe? He's like, I have
Oh, you're
stories
talking
to write.
luxury. You're talking you're talking luxuries there.
Yeah.
And by the way, one measure of just what life is like on Whidbey, and this is not just a Whidbey thing, but you rattled off like 5 or 6 things that I'm doing.
Hmm.
And I've had folks go, "That's impressive. You can do all those things." So yeah, well, take a look at it the other way. I'm having to do 5 or 6 things because none of one of them is working on its own.
Yeah.
And I look around, and I look around,
Diversification.
and I look around the world at this point. And I look at how many folks have got so many gigs going at the same time, and we're trying to make it work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think there's a story there as well, which is there's almost like economical science fiction. Whatever happens to the economy that takes us to the point where we're going through this, and then we're breaking through some sort of innovation, they may be tech based. Does AI enable us to finally get back to having more reasonable lives, or does it, of course, make things worse? And that's why there's more than one book in the world, so there could be authors writing on both sides of that, and I look forward to seeing how they play with it.
Yeah. One of the other authors that's there, Joshua Gayu, wrote a book that touches on AI pretty significantly. It's All Gifts Bestowed, and that's
Great title.
yeah, it's a very good I guess venture into that world, and what would we do if AI did become sentient and started being like, you know what, we're gonna do some stuff to take control and make it so that way humans aren't entirely doing stupid things. I mean, and then I know he did another book series. It was like a world ship. I forget exactly what it is, but it's like a 3 book series off the top of my head, and it touches. It eventually bleeds over in the later books. Like, oh yeah, this is actually a science fiction rather than a fantasy kind of thing or a medieval thing. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's, of course, all the variations on all those where, what is it, fantasy? What's fantasy? What's science fiction? What's just creative writing and things like that? That, by the way, and the one author I found has done the best job with the AI development story in terms of creating not just one AI, but a number of them that compete with each other was Dan Simmons. I don't know if you've read him or not. He's got a Hyperion series
Oh,
that has
yeah.
a yeah.
I've read the Hyper or some of the Hyperion books. I forget which. Uh, I know that's like a kind of a long saga, if I recall.
Oh heavens! He rewrote the Iliad and the Odyssey into two separate volumes based on the fact that the gods were AI,
Hmm.
and they didn't know how the Iliad and the Odyssey played out, so they created the characters. They created a world, and then they dropped the characters onto the world to see how they would play out with the gods being part of it. And it's just one of these things where you go, oh God, if you took, oh, sorry for the oh God, but if you take AI to this extent, would AI play with humans that way?
Hmm.
And that's just another thing that opens up my brain.
Yeah.
Granted, the the basis behind my world is far simpler.
Hmm.
It's basically that somebody somewhere around 2030, now 2022, would realize that AI was going to become so sentient, and that as that happened, it would be too late to leave the planet. Because if it was malevolent, they would never be able to react as fast as the AI could.
Hmm.
So before knowing how it comes out, they leave the planet. So that's what I did with the science and the culture and the history and whatnot, was to actually come up with the math behind what could enable a breakthrough in technology that inside of like 6 to 9 months you'd be able to do something like that.
Hmm.
And it goes all down to Euler's equation, which is put it this way: my acknowledgments, I have an equation in the acknowledgments. I mean, how geeky do you want to get?
Well,
E plus the EI plus one equals zero. I mean, it's elegant.
yeah, and I think there's definitely a group of people that appreciate that those little nods and the links to current things. It is like I said, it is really cool just in general seeing how some of the stuff happens and what people are actually thinking, because then it's like you see a nice little interview or documentary on YouTube or Discovery Channel talking about science progress and AI stuff, and then that gets your brain cooking to think about this potential world, and then
Mhm.
somebody's just like they read your book and then they're like, that's kind of a neat idea, and it's like, wait, it's kind of being said that this is real. Let me look it up, and then they go and look it up and oh, well, shit, that is maybe a possible, idea right there. And then they
Yeah.
start doing more research, and who knows, maybe what's to say that there's not a possibility that an author's book could not. Which was inspired by somebody else's research and stuff like that inspires somebody else to look at that situation and then delve into the research, and then maybe they come up with a solution. Kind of like the Star Trek equation, where, that's how we got
Hmm.
the flip phones, which now
Yes.
became
Thinking of that.
smartphones. Um,
Right.
because, everybody's just like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we had a phone that we could flip like a communicator in Star Trek? And it's like, yeah, why don't we just make it?
Uh huh. Yeah, and that's the thing I find fascinating about sci-fi in particular is that, like I said, I've got 7 other books that are not sci-fi. They're about personal finance and nature and things like that. And somebody finds an idea in that, and great, that inspires an idea, and that inspires an idea. But in sci-fi, if you come up with an idea, if I drop this idea out there for how to do extra dimensional travel based on math,
Mhm.
and somebody else picks it up and runs with it, that doesn't just improve somebody else's book. That has the potential to change some aspect of the world. No, I don't expect it, but I mean, what kind of leverage can you expect to have in the life? That's a wonderful thing to take a shot at. I mean, what a lottery ticket, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why I found that writing sci-fi, especially as the rate of changes things that are happening right now, is far more entertaining than I don't even know the shows to show you on TV because I don't watch the shows on TV. I write.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I heard The Sopranos were a big thing. I heard there's a show called Lost.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, Sopranos is more kind of delving into the human condition. And it's a good show, definitely worth a watch. But like,
I've heard they're all great shows. I just have no clue about any of them.
I'm not sure about Lost. I think that one's kind of like give or take for some people, but like I know, for example, like Blade Runner, the original movie,
Mhm.
that was a very poignant movie for a lot of people because then they were like thinking it's like, oh, I mean, what if we did make androids and stuff like that, and
Mhm.
would they have the same rights and things like that? And then that same idea is bled over into other things like a movie that wasn't as highly rated, but as Bicentennial Man, which was
Oh
kind
yeah,
of a neat little look into that Robin Williams did.
yeah.
And then, I mean, and then touching on another thing, which was how it starts off with a movie that you think is like, oh yeah, this is a fantasy movie or something like that, and it's Cloud Atlas, and you're sitting there and you're watching that. It's
Oh
like, oh,
yes.
fantasy, yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, no, this is going back to the past. And it's
Uh,
talking about the rise of technology and all the stuff, and then it ends up resulting in, you know, knocking people back to the Stone Age in some regards, and it's just like, yeah, okay, so that's actually a sci-fi movie.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sci-fi's a kick. I mean, I think my first book I read was probably not sci-fi. It was, not the first one I ever read, but the first one anywhere close to that was The Hobbit.
Hmm.
You know, so I had to be 50 years ago. Um, and you start at that age, and of course, you're just going to wander from fantasy to science fiction to various types of science fiction and whatnot. I'm glad I've been able to do that, and to be able to actually add something to the library, whether anybody ever reads it or not. Now, of course, other folks have read it, but it's not paying my bills. I'll tell you that. Um, but to be able to contribute, um, let me just kind of go with that. Just in general, what I have found with all the books that I've written, and the reason I've written so many of them, despite them not having paid the rent, is that my books have led me to other people and ideas. Going back to that theme, but get me to conversations that are just phenomenal because you've at least thought about a topic that somebody else has never really spent more than 5 minutes on, maybe 10 minutes, maybe they've had some beers over it, but you just spent a year or two or six or eight thinking about that topic. And all of a sudden now you've educated yourself in a way that's useful to other people.
Yeah.
And I found that that has been a greater lead and a greater benefit from the books. Now, I wouldn't mind if the money was better. But I mean, how can you turn down the fact that, as one person said, I needed to see those words in that order, that way, with that voice at this time? Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Without knowing which words, and you take a compliment like that, and so how can you not keep doing it?
Yeah.
So,
And then the other cool thing is like when your book or your story becomes uh popular enough to have an audience that starts discussing it amongst themselves. Like, I mean,
mhm.
for example, one game series that I grew up playing was Halo, and I end up meeting other fans that are Halo fans, and one of my friends, Matt. I mean, there's sometimes where we'll just like sit there, crack a beer, and have some snacks, and just talk about the interesting little bits of Halo lore, and then we start like thinking like, oh yeah, well this could be a possibility too, or
Mhm.
what do you think about the technology it's that this race uses as opposed to this race? What do you think would be better? What should we what would we push for? Kind of stuff like that, and it uh, gets people thinking about that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden they start having weird ideas like, oh, what if we made something like this? This is a cool idea.
Yeah. Well, and are you familiar with Ringworld by Larry Niven?
I've heard about it. Yeah.
So I'll just it's a mega structure. It's a sort of thing that a class two civilization, one that's using all the power from their sun, would
Mhm.
would build.
Dyson sphere, right?
And it was good. And
It uses
what?
a Dyson sphere, right? to harness
It's
it.
a slice of a Dyson. It's a slice of a Dyson sphere.
Mm,
It's only a ring, but
gotcha.
that's more than trillions of times the space that we've got. But the point was, it was a good story, and he thought it through well enough for it to be a good story. And then it became the inspiration behind master's theses,
Hmm.
because people were taking that idea and then going, could that work? Here's how it could, here's how it couldn't. And there was enough of that going on, it was coherent enough that he was then able to write Ringworld Engineers, which was a sequel that incorporated the ideas from the master's theses into the sequel to the book.
Yeah.
And
So
now that Ringworld series has now gone on to like 8 books or something like that, if you include the Fleet of Worlds sort of thing.
what
And
you're
I just
saying is
go
if
for it.
you do things right with your book and you present a good enough idea, you get people to do the research for you, and then what you do is you sum up that research and turn it into another sequel. So
Great.
I think it'll work out for you, Tom.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah,
I'll
well,
call back. I'll
especially
call back
when
from 2028 and we'll tell you. Say
when
again.
you offer, yeah, so especially when you're offering the collaborations and people are clearly going to be doing their research in order to write their scenario. So
Yeah,
that,
because some of the research I did was specifically for the. I said there's 6 ships. Each one gets set off to a different planet. The planets can't contact each other, so there's no communication between them. But that means I've done a lot of the work for my planet, and they can have to do some of their own for their other planets if that's what they want to do. And there's 5 other planets to pick from, at least, depending on how you want to do it. I hold myself back at that point because I've thought of so many possibilities that I was about to elaborate way too much, so I shut up.
yeah. So are you going to be spending the whole 3-day weekend with us?
As my boss and my other projects allow, that is the intent. I am now, in addition to all the other things that you mentioned earlier, I also just spent some years as a real estate broker, and now I've got a brand new job as a. Let me read the business card: a project manager for the Economic Development Council for Island County. So I'll have more stuff from the personal finance side of the world to put into the book.
Well, that's like you were saying earlier. The funny thing about current day, a lot of people are having to diversify, um, their projects to make a living, and to an extent, like on one hand it's like that kind of sucks, because now you can't just focus on one thing. On the other hand, you now have a whole bunch of different stuff that you can delve into and learn about, so technically that makes you a more rounded person because you're able to be like, yeah, even though my main job is this, I have all this experience
Right.
doing this.
And by the way, yes, I do plan on spending as much time up there as I can. I say up there because I'm on Whidbey Island as well, and I'm within a mile of the southern tip, and you folks are not.
Yeah.
I
We're
think
probably a good
It's okay, it's
40
only a
miles
45-minute drive for you, maybe.
I bet you it's 50 minutes to Coopville.
Oh,
It's
okay,
an hour
yeah.
and 15. It's an hour and 15 for me to do the entire island. So
Yeah, don't
So
forget
so
there's
50
only
minutes to Coopville will be about, just under an hour for you to get from where you're at to here.
right, and that's. But also keep in mind, and this is one of the things I just think is fun about Whidbey, is you tell somebody you got an hour-long commute. The first 10 miles of my commute, there are only 3 stop signs and there's no stop lights.
Hmm.
I can drive a half an hour before I have to hit a stoplight.
Yeah.
And so yes, it is a long drive and things like that, but it's also not going from Tacoma to Everett through
Oh,
downtown Seattle. It's going past Long's Farm and Lake Hancock, which is the old bombing range, and things like that. There's story here, and it's also regardless of the speed limit, it's a slower pace, which I do like.
yeah, and
and
that's
don't
Having
the
said that, I still don't have a whole lot of spare time, but
yeah, don't forget it's a beautiful drive.
yeah.
It
yeah.
is. Some
So,
people
and,
just
and
take a long way around just to enjoy beautiful vistas that we have out here.
so I'm gonna leverage off of that then, since you mentioned that, because like I said, 10 of the books that I just did, it's a 10-year photo essay of Whidbey Island, where each year I took a different spot on the island, and every month I would take enough photos there that I would have 2 good portraits, 2 good landscapes. 12 months out, next year do another one.
Hmm.
and that is everything from the southern tip of the island to the northern tip of the island, and I'm done because a 10-year-long project is. I do things that take time. I bicycled across the United States. Come off it. You can fly there in a lot less. I walked across Scotland. I have a tendency to do long-term things. So to start writing a science fiction novel that took me 8 years is understandable. But then I look ahead, and there's the realities. If I was to write all the sequels that are possible out of this one book, I probably won't be around here that long. There's limits. We're still not at the immortality thing, and that's one reason I opened it up, because not only would I like to see what I want these ideas to be written about, I want to. I'm greedy. I want to be able to see them. I want to see what somebody else has done with this idea, which makes you go, "Oh no, they did that!" And yet at the same time, they had a chance to express themselves, and who knows what that's going to lead to.
Yeah.
So you'll have a good number of your books with you for book signing purposes, right?
I'll have my car, therefore I'll always have books. What author does not have a stack of books in their car? You gotta. That's part of the fuel for the car.
I'll tell you, the authors that are not driving in, but they have to fly in.
Okay, good point. Well, I said back of the car, so they could drive in.
Yeah, they're sending boxes of books and merch here to us.
Yep.
Oh, I should keep that in mind. I should send you guys some merch.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll go ahead and get you the information for that, and then that way it can be here ready, and you don't have to pack the car and deal with all that.
Well, no. With me, the car is already packed because I do so many different things at the same time. I've given up on trying to plan out each day and optimize what's in the car. It all just gets dumped in the car, and then I just pull out of it when I need to pull out of it. And inevitably, like the presentation that was just happening 2 days ago, somebody else was giving it. I was in the audience, and I said, I don't need my travel kit. I don't need the extra cords. And if I had brought it all along, that would have been just the thing that they needed. So at this point,
take everything with you. Yeah, Phil.
Yeah.
And I froze up. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
It was giving us a little heads up here that we have only 10 minutes left on this group call.
And that's how I was doing it. It interrupts to give that message. I never used to do that until the pandemic, but go figure. So what else have we not talked about that we would either have to finish off now or pull up in another separate call that would happen 30 seconds later?
Well,
timing on everything too. We're looking at July 21st weekend, July 21st to the 23rd.
Yeah,
and
1 month.
And just to let people know, this is an outside event. Daniel did order a fantastic big pavilion. In fact, we first saw these pavilions at a wedding that was that we had out here because we're an event site, and boy, that makes a big difference having somebody else put up the big gigantic pavilion, and they do such a fantastic job, and it's really quite beautiful. So we have all of that equipment coming in, and people are going to be very comfortable. There'll be food. And Daniel, who do we have? Right. Who do we have as far as food? Tell us about the food situation.
Yeah, so we got two breakfasts that we're going to be doing, and then 2 barbecue nights. The way I'll go is Friday night we're gonna do pretty much your burgers and hot dogs, traditional barbecue outside, and that's a potluck where if people feel like going to bring something extra besides just having burgers and hot dogs, then yeah, Safeway's just in town. And then
that's 8 minutes away.
And then Saturday morning we're gonna have our breakfast brunch, which is more than likely gonna be just egg scramble and pancakes, and then Saturday night, that's going to be the larger, very nice barbecue. And what's going to happen actually is when one of the people show up, I want to say Friday or Thursday, whenever they end up getting over here, they're going to set up 2 smokers, and they're going to just pack those full of meats. And they're going to smoke it all day Friday. all day Saturday, and by the time Saturday evening comes around, when it's barbecue time, it's gonna be a nice, smoked brisket. I think he's fixing to get some ribs as well. Just a whole bunch of stuff. He's last year he did this and it was absolutely phenomenal. And then Sunday, what we do is we take some of the leftover smoked meats and we throw that into the scramble. And in his words, he's just like, "Holy hell! I never thought about this. I've been doing smoked meats for like such a long time, and I never thought to just take that and put it in some egg scramble. This is amazing."
It was so delicious. So that's going to be included for free in the 3-day ticket. And then, in addition to that, we'll have our pizza person come back this year. And
Well, that's actually
and
included for the 4 meals is included for all tickets because the meals are accounted for in those tickets. But yeah, like you were saying,
okay.
yeah, but like you were saying, we are going to have at least one person that's going to be doing coffee and pizza that you can purchase right there then and there. He'll have that all set up.
Because you got to snack through the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, there'll be some good snackages, and then you can also order DoorDash. Believe it or not, we're like 8 minutes out of town, but DoorDash will bring food. So for those people who are desperate for McDonald's or something, what have you, and for their lunch, they can order that too. So just wrapping things up, we're so delighted you're going to come out and spend the 3 days with us, and we are thrilled that we get to present a local author for this, and that's a nod to Whidbey, as you were saying earlier, that we have such a fantastic artistic community. All types of art. And then you mentioned that the Whidbey writers. So this will be an inauguration of sorts for Whidbey writers, and you'll be the premier guest for that. So
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks for including me. I really appreciate it. And I hope I can actually help point out other writers in the area who could have more experience than me if somebody comes up with a specific question.
Yeah. One last thing. We'll go ahead and give the last couple minutes of this to you, Tom. Where can people find you, and what is some books that you would like people to check out if you want people to know more about you?
Yep, it just popped again. My main website is trimbathcreative.net, and it's TRIMBATH is .net. Used to be .com until an Italian shoe store got hacked into it for some reason. And I'm on a lot of social media under TE Trimbath. And of course, the easiest way to find me is probably going to be go into Amazon and look up Tom Trimbath. I think I'm the only one in the United States. The name goes back to Trimbath, which was 1327, but by the time it got over here, there's very few that could spell that, and it got Americanized down to Trimbath. But I think I'm the only one, and that makes me easier to find.
Mm-hmm. I found you very easily on Amazon. Yes.
Very good. And so that Amazon's got all the narratives that I've written. Blurb.com has got the photo essays. And there's always more to talk about, and that's why my email address is tetrimbath@gmail.com. And after that, I'll leave it to y'all.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tom, for coming out and doing this short little interview. We're hoping that your fans appreciate this, and they'll be like, yes, I finally get to meet him at a event. This will be cool. And we hope that new fans find this, and then they find out, oh, hey, he's going to be at the event. Let me look at his stuff. And, oh, you know what? I want to read this book. And then they show up and they're like, I just read your book. It was absolutely fantastic.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for having this. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I guess I'll see you soon.
Yep. And thank you, Donna, and thank you, Tom, and this is Daniel signing off.
More guests confirming as we get closer. Galaxy's Edge Fan Expo. Coming this July 21st to the 23rd, 2023. Go to tinyurl.com/GEFanExpo and buy your tickets today.